Welcome to Fake Love and Flying Monkeys, the podcast where fake love is exposed. I'm Nova Gibson and I am your host. I'm the principal counselor at Brighter Outlook Narcissistic Abuse Counselling.com.au. This space is dedicated to helping you reclaim your worth and understand the impact of toxic relationships with suspected narcissists. You deserve clarity, healing, and freedom from the pain of fake love and flying monkeys. So please leave a review and grab a copy of my book, Fake Love, Understanding and Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. Let's uncover the truth and take back your power. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. In this episode, we are going to be talking about the impact that narcissistic parenting has on future relationships. Now, people who come to see me in my practice, and I support many victims and survivors of narcissistic abuse worldwide, people who have a toxic narcissistic parent will so often talk about the similarity between the relationships that they've experienced as an adult with another intimate partner, or the relationship they're still in, and the similarity between that relationship and that which they had with what they now know to be their narcissistic mother or father. This is so common, guys, and if you think about it, it makes sense that you would grow up, even though you swore you would never do it, you would grow up to meet the male or female partner version of your parent. If you think about the fact that when you were a child, your brain was absorbing, your brain, which was still growing, mind you, it was absorbing what relationships look like, what the value of love is, what love looks like, whether that was how they treated you or how they treated your other parent, just the dynamics in your family where all confusing, very covert, toxic behavior remained behind closed doors, so that everyone else thought that you were this amazing family and that toxic parent was an amazing parent. How many times do I hear from my beautiful clients lines like, "Oh my goodness, I married my mother," or "I married my father," and then they feel so silly. They can't believe that they actually found someone who they feel the same way with, someone who they're forever trying to please and never quite getting there, and all the other things that are similar with the toxic parent. But what you have to remember, if this is you and you have found yourself in another toxic relationship as an adult, what you have to remember is that you don't go out and choose these people. No one goes out and says, "You know what? I'm going to go and find me a toxic person who's going to treat me like garbage." Of course not. What is more likely to happen is that on a subconscious level, you will bypass people that treat you well, people that respect your boundaries, people that don't provide you with goalposts that they keep shifting, and people that allow you to have needs of your own. You will subconsciously overlook those people. You'll find something wrong with them because they're not toxic, and you find yourself down that path or in the proximity of someone who meets your version, your childhood abused brain's version of normal, of what is familiar, of what love looks like. Now, does everyone who was a child of a narcissist, an adult child of a narcissist, go on to find someone who is just as toxic as their abusive parent? No. Many people, most of the time, they will be the scapegoat child. They go on to find healthy partners. But in those healthy relationships, there will often be of not being good enough. Perhaps there will be acts of self-sabotage where they find themselves subconsciously sabotaging the relationship because they don't know how to deal with someone who respects them and treats them like a human being. There will also be some of the time issues of the coping mechanisms and survival instincts that they had to pick up to survive that abusive childhood, such as being defensive all the time because they were always under attack and never feeling good enough. Now, if that is you and you have those childhood wounds from a narcissistic parent, and you know that you have a partner who loves you unconditionally, then what you also need to believe is that you are worthy and that this person will support you with any of those residual effects of your childhood abuse, and they will support you to understand your abuse and to heal from your abuse. They certainly won't use your childhood trauma as a weapon against you. So when you have that light bulb moment that this is who and what your parent is, and you've come to that place of acceptance, it's then that you can look at all of the other relationships around you and really examine how they have been impacted by how you were treated by the most important male or female role model in your life. A narcissistic parent is going to teach you what boundaries look like, or they're going to teach you to have no boundaries because boundaries are selfish. And it's only important to respect boundaries when they are someone else's, but your needs are not important. That's what they're going to teach you. So it is so normal to find yourself surrounded by other people who support what you view to be normal. I always say to my lovely clients, and by the way, guys, if you'd like to have a one-on-one Zoom counseling session with me, please just see my website link in the description. I always say if you found yourself in a relationship with a narcissist, then you will have more. They're like mice or cockroaches. There is never just one. And if you find one, you can bet your bottom dollar that there is going to be a whole family of them behind the cupboard, or inside that pipe underneath the kitchen sink. There's going to be lots more. Now, the reason is not because you're weak and not because you lack intelligence, but because this is what you view to be normal in a relationship. Other people get to tell you what to do. Other people get you to explain why you don't want to do something. Other people do not accept that you have needs of your own, and other people expect you to be at their beck and call. Supposed friends talk about you every now and then. They talk about you behind your back. They pitch you against someone else so that you'll try harder to please them. They will make you feel guilty if you don't do exactly what they want you to do. But relationships have their ups and downs, don't they? These friends make you feel really good some of the time. And this is exactly what you experienced with that toxic parent over a lifetime. The narcissistic parent will ensure that you fear abandoning them. That is just something that you won't conceive of because you are conditioned to tolerate their abuse, to normalize it through fear, obligation, and guilt. And this process is indoctrinated into your way of life. It changes and forms your perceptions. It enables the way you think and the way you view others in relationships. So what is narcissistic parenting? Well, as you who have done your research and watched video after video about the children of narcissists, and you've realized that you are an ACON, ACON, adult child of a narcissist, you will know that toxic narcissistic parents have no other goal in their family, even when they have children, other than to prioritize their own needs. They have children so that the children will meet their needs, whether that be for attention with very young children, babies, toddlers who are besotted by their mummy or their daddy, or through that fear, obligation, and guilt as you become more independent when you get older. But essentially, the narcissistic parent engages in emotional neglect. Your needs are unimportant. You're taught that to want to be considered important in a relationship, to prioritize your self-care, that is selfish. In other words, that parent is teaching you that love is conditional upon you meeting their needs, doing what they want you to do. Love is also about criticizing you. If they didn't love you, they wouldn't be telling you how bad you are, because someone who didn't love you would just lie to you, right? They would just say, oh yes, you did really well in that performance. You look amazing in that dress. You cooked a beautiful meal. They'll just tell you all of this stuff and it'll just be lip service. But I'm criticizing you because I love you. So what do you absorb? That someone putting you down is because that person loves you. A narcissistic parent also teaches you to believe that in relationships there is always manipulation and control. That just goes with the territory. And love and control are the same thing. Someone who loves you controls you. So this has long-term effects on not just the way you view yourself and your self-esteem and your self-worth, but how you view relationships. So, of course, you are going to experience concepts like difficulty in trusting others. Once you've had that light bulb moment, you now know you can't trust your own parent. If you can't trust them, who can you trust? You may have experienced feelings of being fearful of abandonment because your toxic parent threatened to leave you, or they did leave you alone if you did something wrong. So you were forever anxious around being left, about them leaving you on the side of the road, or just not loving you anymore unless you did what they told you to do. In other words, tolerated their abuse. So what do you absorb in your childlike brain that is still growing? You absorb that unless you submit, unless you allow others to control you, that they will leave you. So what happens then? you try harder to please them, and or you develop this incredible threshold for abuse. Now, that's a big one, guys. People stay in abusive relationships because there is a very, very powerful trauma bond and addiction to the toxic roller coaster of highs and lows, where the highs are really not highs at all. They just deflect from the rock bottom lows. But there's also that conditioned childhood wound that exists a lot of the time, that if you don't tolerate what they're dishing out, if you don't allow them to dominate you, then they will leave you. And you were taught as the child of a narcissist that in order to survive that abusive upbringing, that you indeed had to learn to tolerate that abuse. You had to come up with all of these survival techniques so that your parent would not abandon you. So the powerful trauma bond that exists with the strategies that a narcissist uses, if you can imagine that powerful toxic attachment / addiction to an abuser when you're in an adult relationship, you can imagine that combined with a childhood wound where your parent has made the love, in inverted commas, they give you conditional, and that if you don't do exactly what they want, then they will leave you. If you can imagine those two things paired together to create this dependency on this abusive relationship, it can be all consuming, and it can make the victim, you, the child of a narcissist, try harder to please this toxic person because of that trauma bonds, because you don't want to go through the terrible withdrawal that comes with any addiction, but also because you don't want to endure the thought of the pain of what you experienced as a child when your parent said that I'm going to leave unless you're a good boy or you're a good girl. Leave physically, literally, get up, abandon you and move away, leave you with someone else, or leave in the sense of total emotional neglect where you are not seen, you're not heard, and you are given essentially the silent treatment on repeat, day after day after day, which is absolutely torturous. The children of narcissists will do anything to avoid that torturous silence, which teaches them all of these ways to make the abuse not as bad. It is so that they can survive it. Narcissistic parents also conditioned you as a child to keep all of the abuse behind closed doors. So if you find yourself in a toxic relationship as an adult, then this has been hardwired into your brain. And of course, a narcissistic partner is going to be telling you that as well, that you don't talk about your relationship stuff and the issues that you're having with others. That's a betrayal of trust. And you keep that type of conversation between the pair of you. This is what a partner who is toxic, like your parent, will be reinforcing. In essence, a narcissistic parent teaches you over the course of your lifetime that abusive relationships are normal. And when you find yourself in an abusive relationship, it is familiar. It's what you know is toxic. You may find out later down the track, but you know how to deal with these situations. You've come up with some really good survival techniques, and healthy relationships, heck, what do you do with them? What do you do when someone's respecting you and they're not sabotaging any ounce of happiness in your life? That's just unfamiliar territory, and it's easier to go down the path that you know. It takes time to heal from narcissistic abuse. It takes a lot of time to heal from a lifetime of abuse from a narcissistic parent. And looking at where you have relationships in your life that are toxic and where these people are using you, manipulating you, and abusing you just like your toxic parent, learning to find them and put boundaries in place so that they are gone once and for all. That is so important. Your circle will get smaller. That is inevitable because, as I said, when you find all of these other toxic relationships that were just there, that were not there for you in any positive sense whatsoever, that were just draining you, where you were walking on eggshells all the time. When you find out who those people are, you can get rid of them. And when your circle gets smaller, it will be left with only the people whom you love and trust. It's about allowing yourself to heal and to grieve the relationship you never had and you never will have with a narcissistic parent who has engaged in those abusive patterns of behavior that are patterns over space and time. They're not isolated incidents. It's about healing from that and grieving. And it's also about boundaries. Boundaries weed out the toxic people. And when you start putting boundaries in place, you will find that the toxic people kind of reveal themselves, and these people will start to drop away on their own. And if they don't, you can give them a helping hand. I think one of the most important things that you need to come to a place of acceptance with when you realize that you've had a toxic parent and now you're either in relationship after relationship where you're being treated the same way, you're being abused, you're being manipulated, you're being controlled, neglected, or you're in a healthy relationship and you don't know what to do and you're so scared that they're going to see the flaws in you that your toxic parent told you that were there. They told you that there's something wrong with you, and you fear sabotaging that healthy relationship because you just don't feel good enough for them. No matter where you find yourself in these relationships, it is so important to, number one, know that it was not your fault, but also to understand that your abuse impacted on these relationships, and you do have the capacity to heal. And a loving partner, a loving relationship with a friend, they will not treat you the same way that your toxic parent treated you. But you first have to know and understand what true love and friendship looks like, and that your version or your childhood version of love and friendship and just someone being there for you because they love you unconditionally, that is about unconditional love. And there are no strings attached to love. You have to get rid of that childhood version of what a relationship looks like. It's also important to give away the notion of being perfect. You were never good enough for a narcissistic parent. You came home with a B or an A even on your report card. Where's the A plus? This is not good. This is a fail because you could have done better. give away the notion of being perfect, because everyone is flawed and you do not have to be perfect. There is no such thing, by the way, as a perfect human being. And you certainly don't have to be perfect for someone to love you. So you have got to forgive yourself, if that's the case, for thinking that you deserved any of the abuse, or that you are 100% responsible for any issues that are going on in a relationship with someone who isn't toxic. You do not have to be perfect. You are allowed to be flawed, and people who love you will accept that, and they will not, as I said earlier, they will not use your past trauma as a weapon to hurt you more. And lastly, I just want to reiterate that if you are experiencing these feelings or these thoughts around the fact that you are like your narcissistic parent because you've engaged in some knee-jerk behavior that was role modeled to you over and over again, you are not like them. And the reason you know that is because if you do engage in a behavior that you think reminds you of them, you're reflecting on that behavior. You don't like it, and you have the capacity for remorse. And most importantly, they are isolated incidents. One of the most devastating long-term effects of narcissistic parenting is the impact that childhood abuse, that ongoing abuse, has on all your other relationships. And it is so important to recognize the effects of your upbringing on those relationships, so that not only can you heal, but you can surround yourself with a fortress, so to speak, of other people who know your value, who love you unconditionally, and who challenge that notion of what love's like, or what love looks like, that was imprinted on your brain by a parent who never wanted you to feel worthy, so that you would never abandon them. And that brings us to the end of another Fake Love and Flying Monkeys episode. I hope you enjoyed that, guys, or at least got some value out of it, especially if you are the child of a narcissist, or you know someone who is in this situation. Now, once again, if you'd like to have a one-on-one Zoom counseling session with me, no matter where you are in the world, please just see my website link in the description, and don't forget to get your copy of my best-selling book. Also, a link to that in the description, Fake Love: Understanding and Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. On that note, it's bye from me for now. Until tomorrow's episode, remember, you are worthy of love, and you are worthy of so much more than a lifetime of fake love and flying monkeys.